Hi, hello U9 and welcome to another lesson of science. So we are now week 10 and lesson 4. Now we are moving on from health and disease, and we're now going to be looking at energy in living things. It's called bioenergetics. First of all, we're going to be focusing on photosynthesis. Ooh. Now, you would have done a little bit about photosynthesis in Key Stage 3. So some of the first activities are just going to be dragging what we learned at Key Stage 3 out, and then we're going to be building upon that. First thing I want you to do, here is a picture of a Euglena. Now, you don't need to know what a Euglena is, but it is a unicellular organism. It is not a prokaryote. Because it has got a nucleus. We would actually classify this as a protist, but it does share similarities between both animal and plant cells. So what I would like you to do is have a look at the diagram and what organelle structures help classify it as an animal. So what about the cell makes it similar to an animal cell? And then same idea, but this time what has it got that helps us classify it as a plant? So can you have a go at thinking about those? You don't need to write any of them down, but think of as many things that make it like an animal and as many things that make it like a plant cell. So pause the video and do that now, please. Okay, so hopefully you've had a stab at that. Things that you might have mentioned. So similarities with animal cells is that it has a cell membrane and no cell wall. It has got cytoplasm, which I know is the same with plants as well. It has got a stigma or an eye spot because animals have eyes. Plants don't have eyes. It's got a nucleus that makes it like an animal cell. And you could say it's got a tail-like structure, which technically would be the bacteria, the prokaryotes. But there are some animal cells that have got projections coming out for swimming. So that could make an animal cell as well. Okay, for plant cells, you might have spoken about the chloroplasts, nucleus and cytoplasm, cell membrane. You might have said that it's got a vacuole. Because in plant cells, they've got a permanent vacuole. So that would make it like a plant. Now, in a later chapter next year, you'll do about classification. And these kind of organisms go into kind of a separate section. So you've got plants and animals, and then another group called the protists, which share structures of both. Right. So today we're going to be looking at photosynthesis. Now, the biggest thing in biology, and as a biologist, it's what makes me the most annoyed sometimes, is where people get this confused with respiration. We will be doing about respiration just before the end of term. So we've got photosynthesis and then we'll move on to respiration. Photosynthesis is how plants get their food, not how they get their energy. So we do need to make sure that we are aware of that, because a lot of people say that it's how they get their energy. So what we need from this lesson is we need to know what materials plants need for growth. We need to be able to regurgitate the word equation for photosynthesis, and we need to describe why plants need photosynthesis, need light for photosynthesis. For 5 to 6, we need to be able to describe adaptations of the leaf, write a balanced symbol equation for photosynthesis, which is a lot easier than it sounds, and think of an experiment to prove that plants carry out photosynthesis when exposed to light. That one will mostly be in the lesson we do, which is a required practical later on. And 7 to 8, we need to explain the adaptations, so what makes it efficient at photosynthesis, and explain why chlorophyll is also needed. So we're going to begin. This is going to be mostly drawing out what we know from Key Stage 3. So all organisms, including plants and algae, need certain things to survive. So I'd like you to draw this Venn diagram, so nice and big. We've got animals on one side, and we've got plants and algae on the other side. And then obviously where they overlap, that's what they both need. So I want you to pause the video and come up with as many things that you can think of that animals need to survive, that plants need to survive, or that both need to survive, and they'll go in the middle. And you can think of, there's some examples there. You've got shelter, waste, or a mate. So put those three in first and then build on it. So if you could pause the video now and have a go at that. Okay, so a couple that I thought of, which are quite obvious ones from Key Stage 3. For animals, they need shelter, they need food, and they need water. You might have put food for both of them, because they do both need food. Technically, it's just the plants make their own, but that's not what you learn at Key Stage 3. All of them need space, all of them need opposite sex if they're taking part in sexual reproduction as opposed to asexual reproduction. Both plants and animals need oxygen because both of them will respire. Plants and algae also need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. Chlorophyll, they need the sun, they need insects like bees to pollinate them, and they need minerals from the soil. So there's quite a few other ones that you might have come up with, which are absolutely fine. There's no, doesn't matter at this point, it's just what you already know. Okay, so there's many more of them out there, but an important difference is that plants don't need to eat. So that's what we really need to take away from that. Plants don't go to KFC and order a Zinger Tower burger and eat that. They actually make their own food, and they do that by this process that we're going to be focusing on for a few lessons, photosynthesis. Right, so quick recap of other things that you would have done at Key Stage 3 to do with leaves. In a leaf cell, you have got structures in a leaf cell. In a leaf, there are lots of cells. In the cells, you'll find structures called chloroplasts. And chloroplasts contain a pigment called chlorophyll. So that's the top middle word, chlorophyll. And that is a pigment that absorbs sunlight. So it's very, very important because that is where sunlight is absorbed. We have got glucose. So glucose is what is made in photosynthesis. Oxygen is also made in photosynthesis. Sunlight is needed for photosynthesis. Minerals. Now, plants need minerals to make everything else other than glucose. So they can take the glucose, they can convert it to other things. They need carbon dioxide and they need water. So what I'd like you to have a go at, something that you did do at Key Stage 3, is you would have done the word equation for photosynthesis. So can you have a go from memory at writing the word equation for photosynthesis? And I'll give you a clue. All of the words are on this slide. One word you will not need, and I don't want it to confuse you, is minerals. So ignore minerals. You've got two reactants, so two things that go in. You've got two products, so two things that come out. And then you've got two things that are needed that we put one above and one below the arrow in the middle of the reaction. Okay, so have a go at trying to remember the word equation for photosynthesis. Okay, if you need more time, please pause the video. We are going to look at it in a couple of slides' time, so we're not going to be correcting it at the moment. It's just what you remembered. But when we come to doing it in a couple of slides' time, do make sure that you correct if necessary or completely cross out if it's all gone horribly wrong. Okay, so what I would like you to do, you are going to go onto the video link that I'm going to put on Show My Homework and watch the clip which contains all the stuff you will have done at Key Stage 3. And what I want you to do is just use the video and make some summary notes on stuff that you don't remember from Key Stage 3. So don't write anything down that you already knew, only pop down in note form stuff that you don't remember from Key Stage 3. Okay, and if you obviously weren't paying much attention in Key Stage 3, you're going to be writing significantly more. So watch the video, pop down anything that you don't remember, because you're going to need that to move forwards into the GCSE stuff. So exit this video and do that now, please. Okay, so that was from Key Stage 3. I'm going to be now putting some new information onto that from Key Stage 4. So you might have, when I asked you to write the word equation, you might have got the word equation correct. So the word equation is carbon dioxide plus water makes, and it uses sunlight or light and chlorophyll. So you would normally put light, it doesn't matter which way around it is, but light at the top, chlorophyll underneath the arrow. And that makes glucose and oxygen. Now underneath, that will probably be new to a lot of you, is the symbol equation for that reaction. So we've got carbon dioxide, which is CO2, plus water, which is H2O, makes, using light and chlorophyll, glucose, which is C6H12O6. And I am afraid that you are going to have to remember that one, or try and commit that to memory, because it comes up a lot in biology. And it also makes oxygen, which is O2. Now, in order to balance it, you could sit there and work out how many are on each side in the exam, but that's going to be a bit of a waste of time. Just remember the sign of the devil, 666. Everything's got 6 in front of it, apart from the things that already have 6 in it. So it's 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O makes C6H12O6, there's just one of those, and 6 O2s. Okay, so what is actually happening in that reaction? So we've got carbon dioxide and water going in. Those particles are being rearranged to make new products, and it requires energy. More energy goes into that reaction than comes out. So a really good link to what you covered in chemistry is that it's an endothermic reaction. And I would suggest writing that down. Endothermic reaction is a really good example. I have seen it in exams several times. So it's an endothermic reaction. Now what's happening is light from the sun is being converted. Okay, so it's going from one energy type to another. So light energy is being converted into chemical energy, which is what the glucose is. It's chemical energy. Now we say that it is autotrophic. And autotrophic means it makes its own nutrition. So can you pause the video and get down anything that we didn't already have in our previous notes, please? Okay, so that's the reaction. Now we're going to have a look at where this is happening. So photosynthesis consists of 2 separate but interdependent processes which take place in the chloroplast. Please do not write that sentence. That is just giving more information than what we need. It's just so it makes sense in your mind. So this is happening in the chloroplasts. And you can see in the picture, again, please do not write any of this, that we have got water and sun and carbon dioxide going in. And there's actually a couple of processes, some different reactions that are happening. And that together creates oxygen and sugar. So it's actually different processes happening to make sugar, glucose, and oxygen. Now, what we need to take away from that is not the Calvin cycle, those letters ADP, ATP, etc. That's A level. What you need to know is that it is a chemical reaction. So photosynthesis is a chemical reaction, and it happens in the chloroplasts. Now, the cells in algae and plants are full of chloroplasts. And even though algae and plants are different, they both contain the pigment chlorophyll. Now, it's the chlorophyll that takes in that sunlight and it converts that energy into chemical energy with the addition of carbon dioxide and water. So during photosynthesis, energy is transferred from the environment into the chlorophyll, and it's used to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. And it's happening in these chloroplasts. And here is a picture, a depiction of a chloroplast. So you can see inside you have these stacks of, they're called grana all together, but you've got the stroma, and you've got stacks of those, and the light passes through, it causes this chemical reaction, and that's what makes glucose. You do not need to know about the structures inside chloroplasts, you just need to know that they contain chlorophyll. So from this, photosynthesis is a chemical reaction. It happens in the chloroplasts. The chloroplasts contain chlorophyll, which absorbs the light. So pause the video if you need to and pop that down, what I've said, not what is on the slide. And then we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to look now at oxygen. Okay, so photosynthesis happens to make oxygen as a byproduct. The plants are not making oxygen for us. It is just a waste product. Like we produce carbon dioxide that happens to be useful to plants. They're producing huge amounts of oxygen, but it's completely useless to them in making food. Now that oxygen is released into the air, and we and the other animals will breathe it in. So it's very important that plants are there because they're producing this oxygen that we need. And every year plants make huge amounts of oxygen. Now you can show that a plant is photosynthesizing by the oxygen gas it produces as a byproduct. And that's if you're using plants such as Camomida. I haven't done that, we used that one before, but one that I have used is Elodea. So you can see in this picture, this video, we've got some little tiny gas bubbles being produced by a type of pondweed. Okay, Elodea, that's what Elodea is, just the scientific term for it. And that seems probably really pointless to you at the moment, but kind of spoiler alert, it's going to be really important in the required practical. So one way we can see photosynthesis happening in plants is using water plants like pondweeds, and we can see the bubbles it's making, and those bubbles obviously contain oxygen. Now, what can we do? This is a good link to your chemistry. What can we do? If I collected all of those bubbles in a test tube, what could I do to test whether that gas was oxygen? Have a think. It's one of the gas tests you need to know. Well done if you remembered. It is blowing out a splint, a lit splint, putting it into the gas, and if it relights, then it's oxygen. So you might just have thought, relights a glowing splint, that's great. Ta-da! Wait for it. Okay, so we're going to be finishing on this lesson. This is kind of the bigger task in this one, and then this is the first lesson done on photosynthesis. We're going to be looking at leaf adaptations. Okay, now remember, adaptations are something an organism has that makes it better suited to its environment. So leaves are special, they're adapted to get the most amount of light into them, and it does other things as well, so it gives the most amount of photosynthesis. So for photosynthesis to be successful, a plant needs loads of carbon dioxide, wants loads of light, wants loads of water, and leaves are perfectly adapted to get those things. If we look at a cross-section of a leaf, then we can see these different structures that we have spoken about in that you would have done about before. If you do not, though, there will be a moment in a minute where you'll be able to sort that out. But what I would like you to do is just have a look at the cross-section of the leaf. On the left-hand side, we've got an actual electron microscope image of it. On the right-hand side is just a diagram to show what the different cells are. So if we look at the leaf, how do we think that it is adapted for maximum photosynthesis? So I'd like you to pause the video and I want you to think about how it's adapted for maximum photosynthesis and try and come up with maybe 2 or 3 ways you think it gets the most photosynthesis done. So pause the video now, please. Okay, so things you might have said is that leaves are very thin. So that means that gases don't have far to diffuse. Note all of the links to the previous chapters. Also, because they're very thin, it means light can pass through them. You might have said, looking at the one on the left-hand side, you can see all of those pockets, those air sacs. That's really important because it allows gas exchange. So if you've spoken about the spongy layer or the mesophyll layer allowing gas exchange, brilliant. If you have spoken about the vein providing water from the roots, amazing. Maybe you've said about the palisade cells. We've spoken about that in specialized cells. So palisade cells are very long, so they get the most amount of light, contain loads of chloroplasts, maximum photosynthesis. You've also got these holes, these stomata for plural, at the bottom of the leaf that allows gases to get in and out. So well done if you got 2 or more of those different adaptations. You might have also said, even though you can't see it on the picture, that leaves are very broad as well. So it's got a large surface area, maximum amount of light. So these are the ones that we need to pop down. They have a broad, large surface area for maximum light absorption. They contain lots of chlorophyll in the chloroplasts, that absorbs light. They are thin, so there is a short diffusion pathway. They've got these air spaces to allow easier diffusion or gas exchange. And they have guard cells that open or close the stomata that stops gases getting in or allowing gases in. So can you pause the video and make sure that you've got those 5 adaptations of a leaf? One that I missed, sorry. If you just push play again, add this one on as well. They also have those veins that I spoke about. They contain xylem, which carries water. They also contain phloem that take the glucose away from the leaf to the rest of the plant. So you could summarize veins just as a transport system. Okay. Now, if you, as I said, there will be opportunity on this. If you do not know what the leaf structure was, a cross-section of the leaf, then you can always print screen this slide, print this off or copy it over onto a Word document and use that. Just make sure that you know the structures that are inside a leaf. Okay, so that is it for me today. So it seems like quite a short one, this one. Just need to make sure that we've got that diagram of the cross-section of a leaf if we haven't already done so, and you can annotate that with the different adaptations. So hopefully we can describe how plants get the materials they need for growth. So they get carbon dioxide from the air, they get water from the soil. State the word equation for photosynthesis. That's your carbon dioxide plus water makes, with chlorophyll and light, glucose and oxygen. And describe why plants need to carry out photosynthesis. They need it to make food or glucose. 5 to 6, describe how the leaf is adapted for photosynthesis. So they're broad, they're thin, they've got the air sacs, all of those that we just mentioned. And write a balanced symbol equation for photosynthesis. You must try and remember that glucose is C6H12O6. Describe an experiment to prove that plants carry out photosynthesis. We can see the bubbles on things like Elodea or pondweed. Explain how adaptations make the leaf make it more efficient for photosynthesis for 7 to 8. So we need to take those descriptions and actually explain why that makes it better at photosynthesis or more photosynthesis, and explain how the adaptations, explain why chlorophyll is needed for photosynthesis. So that's about the chlorophyll absorbing the light, and the light energy is then converted into chemical energy using carbon dioxide and water, joining together carbon dioxide and water. So say a little bit of a shorter one on this one. So hopefully we have everything we need. We're going to move on tomorrow to stuff that you won't have done at Key Stage 3, and then we're going to have a look at the required practical, which is very important on this. Okay, thank you very much for joining me. Take care of yourselves, and hopefully you will hear from me tomorrow. Thank you and goodbye.